question 15. And question 15 states, how do you tell if two vectors are parallel? And B states, so that's part A. Part B states, how do you tell if two vectors are perpendicular? R. And then C says, how do you tell if two planes are parallel? So if two vectors, the solution to A, two vectors are parallel, then the angle between them is 0. Yeah, so if two vectors are parallel, so you have a vector like this and this one, if you superimpose them, yeah, the angle between them is just going to be superimposed and be 0. Theta is equal to 0, like that. And then we could take the cross product. So if two vectors are parallel and the angle between them is 0, thus the cross product is 0, since sine theta, sine 0 degrees is equal to 0. So recall that the cross product, if theta is angle between A and B, so where theta is between 0 and pi, then the length of the cross product is equal to length of A times length of B times sine theta. And remember, sine looks like this, and it's at 0 is equal to 0 for sine theta. And two non-zero vectors A and B are parallel if and only if basically this cross product is equal to 0. Yeah, so if this is 0, the length of the cross product is 0, and if it's 0, it just also has a 0 direction, which is just 0. So the cross product has to be 0 for parallel vectors. So if you have a parallel vector like this, cross product is going to be 0. It's not going to actually have a direction. It's just going to have 0 direction. You can call it that. All right, so now let's go look at the solution to B, and this one is asking, how do you tell if two vectors are perpendicular? And, well, so if two vectors are perpendicular, then their dot product is 0, as we covered earlier. So since, again, cosine 90 degrees is equal to 0. So if theta is the angle between the non-zero vectors A and B, then cosine theta is equal to A dot B divided by the lengths A and A times B there, divided by those. And two vectors A and B are orthogonal if and only if the dot product is equal to 0. Again, this means 90 degrees. Cosine 90 degrees or pi over 2 radians is equal to 0. And hence it's used in a definition for the plane. So solution to C, and the C is we're asked, how do you tell if two planes are parallel? That's interesting. And this was, again, from my earlier video. Yeah, all this is from earlier videos. So if two planes are parallel, then the angle of their intersection between their normal vectors is 0, which can be determined using the dot product. So again, this is another play on the dot product. So if you have two planes that are parallel, if this angle is equal to 0, you're going to have the planes like this. They're not going to be intersecting. They're just going to be flat out 0. And yeah, and if the angle is not 0, then they are not parallel. Yeah, so if it's not 0, eventually you can you will cross the plane. So if you're like this, if it's not 0, eventually it will cross it because these all extend out to infinity, and so on. Let's cross it. And yeah, so that's parallel lines. And again, using the formula just for the dot product formula over here with cosine, but instead of that, use the normal vectors n1 and n2. So cosine theta is equal to n1 dot n2 divided by lengths n1 and n2.